WNST Towson round week with the Dolphins and the Ravens, but my last name's Aparicio, and in most places, and especially in Chicago, Illinois, they think I'm a baseball guy. It is World Series week here this week. This guy thinks I'm a baseball guy because I've been knowing him for about a quarter of a century. Some people think he's from West Virginia. Some people think he's from Pennsylvania, but he's actually from Maryland, even though he lives in South Carolina and is a legendary Atlanta Braves pitching coach. He's got the one-way flight back and forth to Cooperstown every year because they're always putting somebody in up there. We welcome the man, the myth, the legend, and fellow animal lover, Leo Mazzoni, back onto the program. Leo, how goes it during World Series 17 here for you?
Well, it goes great. You know what it does? Sometimes it's just a little bit of a sad time for me personally, remembering all the World Series that we were in and all the excitement and the adrenaline rush that I'll never be able to recapture again, regardless of what I do, except for maybe Notre Dame football gives me a little edge there. But anyway, I think it's the greatest time of the year for sports because you've had the postseason in Major League Baseball, now the World Series, you have the NFL, and you have collegiate football, and you have the NBA. So it's all going on at one time, and I think it's a great time of the year to be a sports fan now and not a coach.
How about World Series games in the mid-'90s out in L.A. and Houston? I remember you getting off the plane in Cleveland. It's about 26 degrees. It's snowing down on the field. There were some very, very cold World Series that I sat through that didn't feel like baseball weather. This World Series kind of has a lot, right? Even though it's two National League teams, as I keep telling everybody. But the fact that you have all the ones and the twos lining up, everybody's sort of healthy, Seager aside, and these were the two best teams all year. This is the way you kind of want it to be. And there's so much star power here. Young stars, old stars, Verlander, Kershaw, everybody fighting for a piece of this. This is going to be a great week of baseball, Leo.
Oh, there's no question about it. I'm like you, though. I feel like it's a National League series. I still can't get used to Houston being in the American League. But, I've got a new favorite pitcher, and I've always loved him, but it's Verlander. What he did in the postseason against the Yankees, to me, is one of the greatest pitching performances, I think, in the history of the postseason. Great starting. He wasn't coming out of the one game, and then he comes back for Game 6 and goes 7. I thought he was absolutely outstanding. And Verlander, to me, he will come in second behind Altuve if they win the World Series.
You talk about the postseason pursuits, and you're so near and dear to the Hall of Fame with all of your bunkies, all of your running mates being a part of it, and all of them honoring you. Verlander was one of those guys you looked at and you said, well, he was a Hall of Famer for 2 or 3 years, but that's not what a Hall of Famer is, right? And sort of falls off the shelf. All those years where they were pitching dominant and bullpen deficient in Detroit, all those years trying to get there and win a world championship and having a little taste of it, there was a feeling that he was just on the other side. And this summer, with all of those arms out there, whether it was him, guys that got dangled and didn't get dealt at the trading deadline, and all these years of trying to talk about it in June and July for an impact player that you say, who's the player we're going to go get before the trading deadline that's going to get us to the World Series and give us a chance to win? This is the year where this is the spotlight on a guy who was a little bit overlooked, I think, right?
I agree with you. But you know what? When I saw them make that deal, I thought to myself, watch Verlander get a little bit more of an adrenaline rush here and upgrade his game. And that certainly is what happens. Sometimes a change of scenery does that. I think I remember when we got Fred McGriff to get us over the hump,
Sure.
and that was a special time for us when we got Fred McGriff. Those guys getting Verlander, that all of a sudden jump-started the Astros again. Look, they were out of the block in great shape, and then it kind of, and it happens when you got a big lead in the division, and you fall into that 50-50 category, and they were looking for some sort of spark once the trade deadline came, and boom, Verlander jumps in, and all of a sudden you got yourself, you do have the two best teams in baseball, that's for sure. A little bit of me wanted the Yankees and the Dodgers just because of tradition, and West Coast, East Coast, and all that sort of thing, and bring back the days of the old Yankees and Dodgers. But, Houston and LA are the best teams, and they both went through a little bit of a lull there in August, but man, they sure turned it back around.
Yeah, you say you're kind of rooting for the Yankees. You were the only one, Leo. I'll promise you that, because you know what? They're going to get there. They're going to have a white horse. They're going to have a parade. Certainly, this group of players they have, when you start to think about the Harpers or the Machados or whomever, that they would be able to sign to add into that in the coming years. Being an Orioles fan right now, look, I had Greg Zahn on. I know you know well as well up in Toronto. I said for Tampa, Toronto, and the Orioles, this is very scary to watch this happen right now with the Red Sox and the Yankees. The Red Sox are so pissed about finishing in first place and losing that they fired their manager 2 weeks ago. So, they're obviously not being complacent there, and I don't know what the Orioles are, but whatever they're going to be, it's going to be very hard to match up to what the Yankees are right now and what they're going to be the next couple of years. That's the scary part, is that I'm glad the Yankees didn't win this year, because we're going to be seeing them every October for the next couple of years, and that's not good.
Well, I think too. That mine was only from a traditional standpoint,
Sure.
but I think that Girardi did a great job, and I felt so bad for him with the ball hitting the knob and not challenging it, and how much that bothered him. I mean, I can understand that completely, and he was so sincere in his press conferences, and I've always thought he was underrated. He's done a great job for 10 years with the Yankees, so. But let me tell you something. You're a manager, and you take your team to the World Series, and then you win back-to-back 90-win seasons and gets fired. I don't get it. I mean, John Farrell did what a tremendous job he did with Boston. And same way with Dusty.
Oh, I was getting ready to get to that. I mean, there's nothing sensible about these men who own $2 billion. And I mean, I've seen it with Angelos here for 25 years. Dude, I don't need to tell you. You've told me, what a mess this place was. But you look at the Nationals right now, Leo, you don't need to know much about the world or about life to know that place is a mess. And that's got to be the word around baseball, what they did to Bud Black. I mean, I don't know who they're going to hire, but it's going to be someone that's not as good as Dusty Baker right now, I would think.
I agree with you 100%. What Dusty won in mid-90s in wins the last 2 years, Washington would look like they were over the hump, and they were over the hump. Let me tell you something. You get into the postseason, it's a crapshoot, But if somebody's going to come out and say winning 100 games a year or 95 games a year doesn't cut it anymore, there's something wrong with that statement. And number two, I like what Bob Nightingale said when he said, well, if that was the case, I guess Bobby Cox and the Braves with their 14-year run would have never been allowed to do it. So,
yeah, they would have fired Bobby 3 times during that run, He lost the World Series again. Let's fire him. He's not good.
I mean, come on. I mean, this is, and let me tell you something. With the expanded playoff system now, the way it is a crapshoot. One hot pitcher, you got the one game. But in a best of 5, all you need is for one and a half pitchers to get hot. Now, in a best of 7, I truly believe you find a champion, because the depth of your pitching staff has to be is out there for a best of 7 series. So, those things. It's a little different situation now. The last great pennant race was 1993 when the Giants won 103 and didn't get in because we won 104. But that was the last great pennant race. Now it's a different style of game as far as a crapshoot once you get in.
Well, and then once you get in, from your mind of the pitching coach, and I'm going to get my starter, my Smoltz, my Avery, my Glavine, my Maddox into the 7th or the 8th inning, and we're just going to clean this thing up and rest the bullpen. All of these teams come about this differently in October, and I would think you're even older than me, Leo, and you've been doing this a long time. This is a different style of managing and a different style of bullpen and a different philosophy on how to get through October. And I know we talked about that last year with the Cubs, certainly the Indians. I saw it 3 years ago with the Kansas City Royals and what they did to the Orioles in the ALCS. It really is different, but the Astros are more philosophically old school because they have to be. They don't have that kind of bullpen that they want their bullpen in the game in the 5th inning in Game 1.
Right, and it's going to be interesting to see how they use McCullers. I mean, what a great job he did. Will they continue to use him out of the pen? I got a gut feeling that they will. But no, the way the pitching staffs are handled now, I mean, in the postseason, somebody gets on base, and I think the philosophy now is once you get to the 3rd time around the lineup, they got to put somebody else in. I thought that, why did the Cubs fire their pitching coach this year? I don't know. I mean, and the year before he was a good pitching coach. Why did he get bad in 1 year? There's about 8 or 9 pitching coaches that have been let go this year. And And why? I mean, look, it's a different ball game. It's an analytical ball game. So now you're playing percentages as opposed to, it's like the other day. I was watching a game and they're measuring the spin on a baseball. Well, for the 18 years I coached in the big leagues, or the 24 years I coached in the minors and played in the minors, I used to teach pitchers how to read spin on a baseball so that the spins would be consistent, and then those spins would allow somebody, if the ball was spinning differently and you didn't know why, then you were always going to be 50-50. If the ball's spinning correctly all the time, then you're going to be very consistent. Well, I didn't need some analytical thing to tell me that. I mean, I was doing that for 20 years, for crying out loud. So, all of a sudden they're saying this is something new. It isn't nothing new. Now, I know there's a place in the game for certain things and certain technology, but now it's starting to drive everybody a little bit. It's getting a little bit too much, to be honest with you.
Well, all the technology that's out there doesn't belie the fact that Kershaw has to be the guy in this series for the Dodgers. And, I mean, there are other guys behind him, but for him, for his reputation, for what he's been, for being the best pitcher of his era, this is the biggest week of his life. And he's got to go out there and take the ball 2, maybe 3 times. And the Dodgers are counting on him to be right this time.
Well, I would be too. And you know what? And if to me personally, if he doesn't have a great World Series, the bottom line is this: to me, that does nothing to take away from his greatness. To be perfectly honest with you, it's like everybody used to tell me that Maddox and Glavine didn't pitch as well in the World Series. Well, of course they did, but somebody else on the other side pitched good too. And then Smoltz was the one that would elevate his game a little bit, but that does not detract from your greatness as a pitcher, just based on a couple of starts in a World Series. I personally believe that. I believe it's over the long haul and the standard of excellence set over the long haul that means more than anything, because then you have the opportunity to get into the World Series. And now everybody wants, well, if you don't win the World Series, blah, blah, blah. No. I understand your goal is to win a World Series, and absolutely I agree with that 100%. But it doesn't take away from the fact that, for example, what would Washington do if they weren't even in the pennant race? That's my point, being that they had a chance to go to the World Series. They had a great season, and the opportunity is there to get to the World Series. So I would rather lose once I get into the playoffs than not get there at all.
Yeah, we played that way this year. It was a lot more fun losing in the 11th inning of a one-game playoff than it was not being in the race.
You ever hear those fans saying, well, I'd rather not lose by 1 run. I'd rather get blown out. What, are you out of your mind? You've lost by 1 run. That means for the entire ball game you had a chance to win it.
Leo, this is a real spotlight for the Houston Astros, right? For the National League team that's now in the American League. They were down to the Yankees. It looked like they weren't going to make it. They came home and flourished. And Altuve's in the middle of all of this. Boy, he's one for the ages, right? I mean, as far as his size and sort of the Muggsy Bogues of baseball. And you remember Freddie Patek, I know. This is really kind of something to behold, to see a guy of this size play the game the way he is. And the other part, Leo, he's Venezuelan, so I like him even more because of that.
Well,
what are my people?
He's been outstanding. I think back when I see smaller guys that have good postseasons, I think of Mark Lemke. Sure. He did a great job for us, but Altuve's taken it to another level. I mean, he's not only playing with power, but he's playing with great defense also. His enthusiasm in the right way. His enthusiasm in the right way, not trying to show somebody else up, but celebrating his success. There's a fine line there, and I think he's doing it the right way.
Leo Mazzoni, the man, the myth, the legend, longtime pitching coach of the Atlanta Braves, and, of course, the Baltimore Orioles, joining us here from his palatial estate down on the lake in South Carolina, where he's got his feet up watching college football and rooting for the Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll talk about that later. I want to talk to you about animals, man, because I've done a lot this month for Be More Humane here. The Ravens played over in Wembley. We got our ass kicked by the Jaguars over there in Week 3, and we lost our cat, our beloved cat, in Paris on the Thursday before before the game, and went into a massive hole of grief and came out of it by going back out to be more humane and adopting our beautiful creature Nala, who's in the other room right now, and I'll bring her. She's not afraid of me doing radio, Leo. My old girl, she didn't really like the noise of all the radio yelling and stuff that I do in here. But I'm training the little one. We got a little kitten. We got an 8-week-old kitten. She's now 10 weeks old, and we are just having the time of our life training up a kitten. And I know a lot of your charity works toward animals, so I want to give you a platform to talk about it.
That's right. A Companion Animal Connection. My wife, Rebecca, and I have been supporting that for years. And we adopted 2 dogs, Gypsy Rose and Miss Emma, from the adoption, from her agency. And we lost Miss Emma last year. She was 9 years old, but it was spinal cancer. So we went out and got Sally Mae, and we went out and got Cody, which is their part German Shepherd mixed with Husky, and then Gypsy Rose and Emma were just little brown mutts that we love very much. So Gypsy's still here, and we got 2 new ones. And I tell you what, when we lost Miss Emma, it'll be a year ago next week. I tell you what, we were distraught. I mean, it was brutal.
I've never experienced that. I couldn't explain it. I'm trying to explain it. Now you're trying to explain it, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're sitting there looking like Rebecca and I are going. The house was empty. It felt lonely, So, and we let her sister, grieve a little bit. And then once she started moving around again, we decided to get her another brother and sister. So. We love them, and life would be real dull without them. And there's nothing like tracking mud all through the house. Oh, by the way, we put up like a little autumn tree, put some fall decorations on it. Well, the bottom half of those decorations are gone.
Oh, I bet.
They're all. We come back last night from going out to dinner, and they were all over the living room floor and in the 2 guest bedrooms.
You know what you need to do is decorate the bottom of it with just like dog bones, dog biscuits, and just let them have that.
Yeah.
Just invite them in.
But no.
Companion Animal Connection. It's CA Connection out on Facebook. I'm looking at it. A lot of beautiful little creatures here that you can help out. And, for anyone that's into taking care of animals, and the Show Your Soft Side campaign folks have reached out to me about our girl as well. So, hey, man, we're on it. We're all in it together. Leo, always love having you on. Any last thoughts? Any thoughts on the Orioles in this offseason where Buck and Duquette are dangling with 1 year left? Adam Jones, Britton, Brock, and, of course, Manny Machado all up a year from right now. This is really, really a long offseason, and this is really what Mr. Angelos has not been very good at managing over 25 years. This is a real crossroads for this organization after having really unprecedented success here the last 5 years.
Well, I think the bottom line is this. You got to keep that core together because they're still young. The offensive core, and you got to get some starting pitching. I mean, come on. I mean, you have to get some starting pitching because I thought the starting rotation underachieved. I didn't think that. I thought that way too many runs given up by starting pitchers. That's the bottom line. They've got a great offense, and I think if you keep the core together, they're always going to be scoring some runs, especially in that ballpark. But you got to get some starting pitching. I know that everybody goes to the bullpen quick now, but you got to get somebody to get you to the bullpen. You can't be down 5 and 6 all the time after the 5th inning, which their starters gave up 5 runs or more a whole lot of way too many times. So
well, we were in the middle of the season. All of our starters had ERAs above 5. I mean, I've never seen anything like it.
You're not going to win anything doing that. I mean, I don't care if you got Murderers Row. You're not going to win anything doing that. If you think you're going to outslug anybody, and you're right, Boston and the Yankees ain't going. They're not going anywhere. They're only going to get better because you can see that they're not satisfied with what they've done, and both of them had tremendous years. So I think the core of the offense needs to be kept together and give some extensions to the core of the offense. And get yourself a couple starting pitchers somewhere, or at least try to develop something because I don't know when's the last time they developed a starting pitcher out of their farm system.
That would be Bedard. Yeah, I guess maybe. Hey, Leo, always a pleasure having you on, man. Keep watching the baseball. Keep taking care of the animals down there at CA Connection. We'll stay in touch with you during the offseason. And the minute the Orioles start doing screwy stuff, I'll call you. Okay?
Hey, stay in touch. I love talking to you, and I love talking to the great people of Baltimore.
Baltimore, home state of Maryland, the Free State. There he goes. Astros, Leo Mazzoni, the man, the myth, the legend. He'll be going to Cooperstown for another induction next year. You know that. So that's the way those old Braves roll around here. Meanwhile, we're trying to fix the Orioles, trying to watch the World Series and getting ready for Ravens football this week as well. Luke Jones on the back, Fields in Owings Mills. If there's any breaking news, you get it first on the WNST text service. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. And, of course, Dennis will be here on Thursday getting you ready for Ravens football from 3 until 5. It is the SSV on WNST. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. If you're out on the east side on Route 40, stop by and give my pal Paul King a ring. King Discount Liquors, Lottery, Beer, Booze, the best prices in Baltimore. Never drink and drive and always use a designated driver. Make sure you get to Rosedale and give the King a ring on our dear friends at King Discount Liquors. I got to get over there for a little refill. I'm out of wine. I'm whining about being out of wine. Last but never least, you can whine and you can complain and you can send me love mail and hate mail. Nasty at WNST.net is the best way to reach me. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.